Hi everyone. In today's course, I'm going to show you how to create a Rhino assembly diagram. So we'll take something that looks like this, and then we'll turn it into something like this, where it looks like, you have a wood hatch on here, and you have hierarchy of line weights, dimensions, center lines, and so it looks like an exploded assembly diagram. And so we can take, one piece like this, or we can start to show it out as something like more blown up, as like an assembly. But this is something that I find very helpful because you don't have to jump around from multiple programs. You can do the dimensioning, the line weights, and the graphic styles all in Rhino if you wanted to, and then take it into InDesign, for example, if you want to do the final layout. So this is a great time saver versus jumping around from multiple programs. So let's go ahead and get started. The first thing that we're going to do is actually create this traditional Japanese architectural joint. This is probably one of my favorite architectural Japanese joineries because it's a oblique scarfed joint, and scarf joints are fantastic if you really want to hide seams. And so this joint is just absolutely beautiful because it's based off of a module of fours. It's based off of an equal division of whatever four measurements you want to use. And it's perfectly proportional and it's perfectly symmetrical, which I love. And you'll see once we start to build it. But it's basically, in English, I think it's called like an oblique double-faced or triple-faced scarf joint. It's a very long name in English. But in Japanese, I think it's called the Miyajima. It's the Miyajima architectural joint. It's just absolutely beautiful if you see them in real life. The actual seams are literally seamless because you have these long diagonal cuts, and so or these long diagonal joints. So it's really hard to find the seam, especially if you use the same wood grain. And it's just so easy to build. So we'll just go ahead and first show you how to build this. And then I'll show you all of the settings of how to create settings like this so we can get final drawings, and I'll show you final exports. The dimensions I'm going to use is based off of a book that I had in a while. It's like, I think it's called Classical Japanese Architectural Joints. And this one they use the millimeters, 52.5 millimeter wood module. And it's divided by 4 equal spacings of 52.5 across 210 millimeters. So the first thing that we're going to do is create the module for this architectural joint. And it's based off of a module of quadrants, of fours. So I'm going to draw a line, and it's 210 millimeters long. Enter, and you can press enter again, or you can click. I'll draw another line, and it's 52.5 millimeters wide. Enter, and just click or press enter. And here I can either divide, right? And I'm going to make sure I do group output, and I want to do 4 and press enter. So that's one option, and then just copy them 4 times. Otherwise, I can duplicate it 4 times with the gumball. So I can hold Alt or Option and click here, and then just do it by the distance, right? And just repeat it, right? The other ways I can also offset it. You can also array it. There's so many ways of doing one thing in Rhino. But that's that. So this is the module. It's super important that you get this down. And then what I'm going to do is draw another line down the middle. Just use my gumball, drag this point down here. This is just random, nothing specific. And so from here, this is how we create the architectural joint. So I'll do a P line, a polyline, and I'm going to go from here to here to here, all the way back to here, right, to this point here, and go back. I'll just use my tracking like that, and I'll use my tracking here like that, and then like this. And then what I like to do, because see, this is like an overlap point. If you do simplify curve, it'll get rid of any redundant points for you. So this is the top face of the joint. Very important that you get this down. And then everything else is pretty straightforward. So I'm going to click on these two, and then I'm going to do ZS resume selected, right? I'm going to click on this one, and I'm going to do planar surface, right? And then I'm just going to move this one up like this. Or excuse me, I'm going to move it up by the actual amount, which is 52.5. Like that. That's the actual amount, 52.5. So what we're going to use is the surface from 3 to 4 points right here. That's the command we're going to use right there. If you click on it down here, it's the very first one. We can also use other commands. I can do like a P line if you wanted to and do planar surface. I'll show you all different options. So this one, right, I'm going to go here, And I'm going to go from this point here. You got to zoom in when you do this so you don't misclick, right? And let me turn off my near, because near is not a good snap to have when you want to be very accurate. Click here, like that. You press enter to repeat the command, but it goes from here, 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 and that back side right there. Let me just zoom in, make sure. Yep, good, 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 good. Let's repeat it again. 2. Enter. When you do 3 points, you have to press enter to close it. If you do 4 points, it'll automatically close. So for example, on this side here, 1, 2, 3, 4. You see? Or I can do P line, right? And I can go 1, 2, 3, and then do C for close. And then I can click on this and type in planar surface. And I get that. That's an option, right? I can also dupe edge, right? I can dupe this edge, dupe this edge, right? Select this one. Oops, or just draw a line. Right, select those edges and do planar surface if I wanted to. So there's a lot of ways of doing one thing in Rhino. I go back to this one. 1, 2, 3, 4. Great. So you see, that's literally the joint right there. This is the joint. And then what I can do is I can select, all these faces. And do J for join. And so what's really important is if you see up here, one closed poly surface. That's really important. You want to make sure it's closed, That's when you know that you have a clean geometry. And so I want to show why this joint is so beautiful. It's beautiful because all you got to do when you make these joints, like you can literally make replicas of these joints, Like I'm talking about real life. Like you can make replicas, and all you got to do is you just take this joint and you rotate it 180 degrees. And it joins perfectly. You see? It joins perfectly. In real life, it'll be seamless because in real life with joinery, because you're scarfing the joints, it's really hard to find the seam. Your eye, the human eye, because the human eye is always trying to look for patterns. And so in actual real life with joinery, when you try to find this seam, it's so hard. There's also a key in here, which I'll show you how to do. But that's basically the joint. And that's why it's so beautiful. Like you can literally like just knock out a bunch of these, right? And all you got to do is just rotate them and join them together. And it's an incredibly strong joint too. So we have that, right? And so now the next thing I'm gonna do, we'll just keep this here as like the master one, and I'm gonna just separate it and go here, right? And what I wanna do is just duplicate it again, rotate it 180, right? And then I'm gonna move this from here to here, right here, right? And I'm gonna draw a line from here to here. This is the mid of that joint. This is just, I'm just doing, the key I'm gonna make is gonna be random, nothing serious. And so I'm just gonna do a rectangle. Maybe it's 5 millimeters by 15, like that. And then I'm gonna move it by the center of it, right here, and just rotate it 90, right? So what I wanna do is the actual joint itself, it's actually rotated at an angle. So and it's rotated by the corners hitting the centers. So the corner, you go to this corner and it hits the center. That's how it is by the actual traditional joint. It's like that. And it actually protrudes out. So I'm just gonna go up maybe like 5 millimeters. And then It extends a little bit below the midpoint, which is, so if it's 52.5, it's like 27, 20, it's, I don't know, like 27 point something, I don't know, or 26 point something, 26.25. So I can just go down 27 millimeters, like that. There you go. In reality, it's actually like tapered down. So like, if I go to wireframe real fast, this joint right here, it like tapers like that a little bit. The key, excuse me, the key. But I'm just gonna keep it as a straight block for now. In reality, you definitely want to, like in real life, you want to kind of uh, taper it towards the end. You don't want to have it as like a straight block. But we'll just keep it straight for now. So we have this, and so what I'm going to do is I'm going to do Boolean difference. Well, let me just do Control C, Control V. You can also, in the Boolean difference commands, keep it, but I just like to copy it just in case. So Boolean difference, and so select surfaces to subtract from. It's these two. Press enter. I want to subtract with this. Enter. There we go. And so if I delete that, and let me just lock this real fast. There you go. I had to go inside and select it and delete it. Unlock. There you go. So you see, I gotta press this one and delete this one too. So there's the hole right there. So if I move this, you see, that's the actual joint right there. That's the key. And what's so beautiful about this joint as well is that it creates so much friction that, yes, having the key locks it in place, but even if you don't have the key and you have good craftsmanship, the actual friction of the joint will lock it tightly in place. I mean, you definitely want to have the key in there, but the actual joint will have so much friction that it'll lock as well. So the next thing I want to show you actually are the graphic settings that you can do. So right here, if you notice, I have these graphic settings here. You see where this looks like a wood hatch, right? So I want to show you how to set this up in Rhino. What you're going to do, the first thing you're going to do is you're going to type in options, and you're going to go down to view, okay? So you go down to view, and then I want you to actually click on display modes. Click on display modes. And then what you're going to do is I want you to click on monochrome, and then you're going to make a copy of it. You're going to make a copy of monochrome. And then it'll if you scroll down, it'll automatically say copy of monochrome, right? And then you can go ahead and rename it to what you want. Okay. I already have settings saved, so I'm going to show you how you can just copy the settings of this. So I'm calling mine monochrome material, and these are the settings that you definitely want to follow. Okay. So after you rename it, what you want to do is actually close this, right? And then go to your view and set it to that new view you just made so you can see the previews live, okay? Let me just go here so you can see how it changes in real time, right? So then go back to options and then go to that setting you have. So you'll be view, display modes, and you drop it down and find the one. So it's monochrome material. So again, after you rename it, background, you want to make it a solid color and pick whatever color you like. I'm just doing white. You want these to be off, so no ground plane, that's off, shadow off. You can keep that. Shading settings, you can do shade to objects, you can keep that checked. Color and material usage, I want to do rendering material, okay? I want to do rendering material, okay? So if I do, for example, like if you see here, if I do white or a single color, you see how it changes? I want to do rendering material. Okay. And then for back face settings, it's going to be the same options. Use front face settings. Now visibility is super important. Show curves, show edges, show silhouettes. Optional. Optional if you want to show lights. Show text, show annotations. Optional if you want to show points. Hidden lines optional. I wouldn't do it. Lighting method. I'm doing ambient occlusion. Okay. So those settings are important. Make sure you get those down. Very important. Now I'm gonna click on the drop down menu of the monochrome material, and I'm gonna drop down again. You can change the point size if you want to show it. So maybe make it, honestly, 3 is a little too big. I would make them like 2 or 1 if you want to show them in your final display. Curves. I want to definitely only have 1 and do object color. Okay, use object's color. Very important. Okay. And then curve width settings, use object's width. So you can just keep these as the default. Lines. Okay. Very important here. Okay. So because these are the lines that you're going to see on surfaces, like on surface edges, not regular lines. Like anytime you have any type of surface, it's the lines that show on your surface edges. So I have these all the same color as black. Or you can just say use object's color, but I like them all to be the same color as black. I don't want it to be affected by the layer color. If you want it to be affected by the layer color, then you can go here and do use object's color. But I don't want to. I want it so that they're just all black or like a dark gray line. So if you're going to show hidden lines, I would keep it super light. Edge colors, I would definitely make it 1, no greater than 2. No greater than 2, okay? Silhouette line color, you want that to have a lot of pop to it, so I made it an 8. Intersection, you can keep it as 1. I would prefer to keep it as 1 for edge line, but sometimes 2 helps it to read if you really want it to read. Again, no greater than 2 for edge line color, okay? This is also, all the settings I'm showing are very important, but this is very important as well. Clipping planes. You can go back to my other videos about clipping planes. If you're going to show the clipping plane, then you need to make sure that the rest of your lines are the same line weights of 1. You don't want to have anything thick on here if you're going to show clipping planes. If you go back to my other videos, you'll see what I'm talking about, specifically like the monochromatic section video. But if you're going to do a clipping plane in this type of view, then you need to make sure your lines, everything on here is 1. If you're going to do clipping planes. If not, for clipping planes, you can just ignore it. Just ignore any of these settings. But if you are going to show clipping planes, I like to, again, keep all the solid colors of the fill the same, like the fill and the edges of the clipping planes the same, and give it a thick cut line. But again, I need to repeat, if you are going to show a clipping plane in this type of view, then your lines need to all be 1, because you do not want it to compete with the strong cut line of the clipping plane. Okay? If you're not, which I recommend, not mixing your clipping plane with this, then just keep the clipping planes on default and don't do a clipping plane on here. Do it on like a separate view. Shadows. On my shadows, I have basically everything on low, except the what is it called? I guess the video memory usage, or the shadow size, and the edge blurring. And then down here, for my shadow color, I'm keeping the same color as my lines. And the shadow intensity, I'm actually bringing it down to you want to bring it down between 15 and 30%. Other settings, you don't have to worry about it. And that's it. Once you have that, you're good to go. And so what I did here, so you see here, what I did is, if I go here, this is on my solid layer. I made a layer here. Of course I made a layer, but I made a material. You see? And this material, I'm using a seamless hatch pattern that's like a JPEG or a PNG. But you have to make sure that the background is white. Okay? So that's how I'm getting this look here. I'm getting this look because I'm just using a typical seamless pattern that you can find anywhere. You can do like seamless wood hatch pattern. Just make sure it has a white background to it, that it's not transparent, okay? So, I mean, I think I can show you what it looks like. Let me just go here. If I can find, I have so much material here. It's right here. It's this one. Let me make this a little bit bigger if I can. You see? It's like this like seamless wood rift cut material. You can do quarter sawn or you can do rift cut, but it's literally this simple. That's all it is. Right? So I made that a material, and then I gave it a slight transparency of 75% on here. I didn't make it 100%. I made it 75% just to give it like a little bit of lightness to it. And then everything else is just default. 0% gloss, 0% transparency, 0% reflectivity. Just an image. That's all it is. Because I want it to look like a hatch drawing on Rhino, you know? That's it. And then I do OK. And that's what I get right here. I could change it. I can if I go here, change it. I have one that's actually like an actual real material right here. The wood grain material. If I change it to the wood grain, you see? Changes to wood grain. I don't want it to look like a rendering. I want it to look like a hatch. So let's go back to solid. Oops, gotta click here. Let's go back to solid. I want it to look like an actual like drawing, you know? And so what's beautiful about this is that like you can do everything on this. You can do your axon. So for example, like if I wanted to show this as a dashed line, right? I have this different layer here. I call it silhouette. Let me just make it active for a second. And if you go here to the right, I change the line type to dashed. I can also do hidden if I wanted to, right? If I go here, I do like silhouette, right? And I just drag it over here. You see? I get this silhouette. So like maybe you want to show like how it's like exploded away, right? So like if I go here, I can do like silhouette. Let me just group it. Oops, I always type in ground plane group, right? And I can just delete it, you see? And I get that. It's helpful actually in like this type of diagram here, you see? And that's basically it for my dimensions, right? I'm doing millimeters. So if you want to make sure when you're doing your dimensions, if I type in units, you want to make sure that your model and your layout are in the same layout units, okay? Typically Rhino will make them different by mistake. I don't know why, but you want to make sure that your units for the model are in like whatever units you're in, so I'm millimeters, and that your layout is also in millimeters, okay? And so if I dimension, right, I can do dimension, dim. And as an example, like, I'm dimensioning from here. I made a dimension layer. And I picked the color of my dimension by the layer color. So I'm doing like kind of like a very, 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 very dark gray. I do dimension, dim, right? Go from here. That's my dimension right there, you see? Very clean. I like to do dots. You don't have to. You can do tick marks. All right. So if I click on this here, and if I go to properties, you can edit the style, right? And you can edit, your dimension, right? How big, like if you want to extend beyond lines or not. Arrows, just like dots. Instead of dots, you can do ticks, right? And an important note about your dimension styles, right? So if I go to annotation style, right? You want to make sure that you're following a correct annotation style, okay? So if you do new, you can pick from a bunch, right? So if you want to do millimeters, then do one of the millimeters. So I did template millimeter small, okay? So if you don't find millimeters on there, just click on new and it should upload for you, all right? So I did, template millimeter small, then you click here, and then you can start modifying them in the formats you like, right? Like the scales you like and stuff. And then that's basically it. And then you can start to save views, right? So I actually saved some views. So if I do like, that's V1, so that's V2, V3. So like for example here, right? Now, this is the important part is how do you take it out as a drawing, as a final drawing? So when you take it out as a final drawing, you have options, but the best option is actually to print this. You don't want to do view capture to file or view capture to clipboard because the dimension strings will come out thick. So if you do like view capture to file, for example, even if you upscale it, so like if I do custom and I upscale this to like 4,000 pixels or 8,000 pixels, it's going to show the dimension strings as really thick. And so that's why I like to print these. Or you do like a layout, okay? It's your choice. I can either print, I can do Control P, right? And what I did is I gave it a custom size and I made it 200, like it's basically like 10 inches by 10 inches. It's a square, so 254 by 254 millimeters. And I want to do raster output and I'm doing print color, okay? You can do display color as well, not a big deal. And then you can do window if you want to. Actually, if you're going to do straight up from the print settings, you can do window. And you can set the window, right? I already have it set. But if you want, you just literally click, you know, like this. And you just press enter, right? And then you got to get your scale down. So make sure you know what scale you're working with. Or you can just do it random. If there's no scale to it, just do it random. But if you have an actual scale to it, then know what the size of your sheet of your paper is. And then this is actually really important. So line type, I'm doing match viewport display. And here, the line width, okay? So if you see right now, I have it scaled by 0.2. What that means is that it's taking all of the current line weights that you see on this display and it's reducing it by 80%. If not, so just look what happens to the preview. If I make it just 1, so if you do scale by 1, that means it'll just keep it at its original scale that you see. You see how it just got, everything got basically matching the same. I personally like to make it a little bit lighter than what I see on here. So when I do scale by, I do around like 0.75, you know? And it makes it a little bit lighter. I personally like it pretty light, so like 0.2, right? Not all the time. I think in this scenario it looks nice, but not all the time. Sometimes you want to keep it at 1, or sometimes you want to keep it like at 0.75. Okay, I'll show you final export settings. Okay, and then unfortunately for Rhino, they don't have transparent backgrounds when you print. I could be wrong, but I don't think you can do transparent backgrounds yet. Even if you go back up here and you save this as like the image files, like a PNG or a TIFF up here, it still doesn't give you transparent backgrounds. I've tried it. I could be wrong though. If you know, you can correct me in the comments and share some knowledge. So you can print it directly from here, or you can basically just do like a new layout, right? So if you go here, you can do a new layout, right? And call it whatever you like view, right? I have this saved. I did custom sheet size, Rhino PDF. I'll do none for now, not a big deal. I'll just show you how to do it completely from scratch. And then just do OK. So we get this guy here, right? And so if we go here, we want to insert a new detail like that, right? And if I double click on here, this is the new detail. I can go to my view. So if I go to set view, maybe, I don't know, like V5 or something. Sure, we'll just do like that. That's one of my views. Or let's just go to, and I can type in my views too. V4, V3, right? And then I can just like pan it if I want to, like that. And I can also change the view display, right click here, monochrome material, right? And again, you want to see this part's really important. You want to make sure that your model units and your layout units are the same. That's why you double click out of here. You do units. You want to make sure the model units and the layout units are the same. If not, you're going to get a lot of trouble in here when you're trying. If you double click in here, you know, this is going to bother you a lot. So you want to make sure these two are in the same units. Model units is like real life, you know, real life scale, and layout is what you print. So just understand that. And so that's basically it, you know. And I mean, and you can also move your detail margins. Like you can move this up if you wanted to, you know, up to here if you wanted to. You can move them wherever you like. Again, if you want to activate it, just double click inside of that. and you can change your views like this if you want to, you can change your views, change the display modes. Like I can do rendered if I wanted to, but it's rendered. You see, that's like rendered view, weird. But let's go back to the custom one we made. And then it's the same thing, just Control P. And if you set up all of your layouts, you can literally do print multiple layouts and then select all the ones that you want to print. And then you're pretty much good to go. Okay, I'm going to switch over and I'm going to show you the final exports of these from the PDF prints and how I lay them out. And I'll also show you like the difference between when you scale it. Like remember if you go down here, if you the line width, if you scale it, if you keep it at 1 versus if you scale it down, like how it actually looks. So I'll show you the differences of that. Hey everyone. Okay, so these are like some of the exports that I did. Like these are things that I laid out in InDesign, just played around with layouts, So this is how it looks like when you print to PDF from Rhino, like this. So you see if I zoom in on here, like you see how you get this thick line here, right? If I scale it down, it'll be even harder to see, right? Another view here. You see how thick this one is? So let me just go back for a second just so you see. This one here, I actually scaled down the line weight by like 0.75. This one, I kept it as 1. You see the difference? How that's really thick? This one here is 0.2. You see how like thin it is? This is all from Rhino. Like this, it looks like you like did this in Illustrator or something. This is all from Rhino. I mean, not all. I mean, the layout I did in InDesign. This is another layout option. Again, you see how thick this is if I scale it at 1. By the way, I'm zooming in, I'm at 345%. And oh, by the way, these are like low quality JPEG exports. The exports from Rhino were like 300. I downscaled it to like 100 DPI. So these are like super low scale. So the original ones are super high. And I'll show you the original like high scale, high DPI versions. You see? Look great. I think they look fantastic. Let me show you. So again, like you see how thick that line is? Let me show you now like the super light version lines. This is like the straight up exports from Rhino. So you see very high quality, like I'm zoomed in, This is like, you see how thin the lines are though? So it's a matter of preference, like aesthetic preference. Again here, you see? Very high quality. This is super high quality. Again, 0.20, you see the thick outline isn't as prominent anymore. It's very, like, it's like kind of, everything's kind of the same. So it's a matter of preference if you want a thick outline or something more thin. You go back up. But yeah, that's it. I hope you really found this helpful. And, if you have any comments or questions, please put them in the comment section below. If you think this video is helpful, really do please like and subscribe because it'll help the channel grow and it'll give a lot of people opportunities to learn different methods in Rhino and Illustrator and InDesign, like all these programs that architects and designers need to use. So yeah, please share this channel with your friends and with your colleagues if you think it's helpful, not just for yourself but for others as well. Alrighty, thank you.